So motivation has got, you may see it delineated in a number of different ways. Dan Pink will attach the words purpose, autonomy, and mastery to these three items here: collaboration, choice, and challenge. So we're going to go through and look at the dimensions of what this actually means inside of an organization. You're going to have a worksheet, I believe, to work on, which is going to look at these dimensions as a continuum. And I would encourage you to think of that when we go through these. Don't think of them as binary conditions, but gradations. You're going to see within organizations that it's not an either or category, it's some of A, some of B. And so we're going to go through and see how this actually works. So with motivation, first item, collaboration. So when we have high collaboration environments, what are some of the characteristics that we can think of when this comes to mind? What are the cues that we might observe inside of an organization? Some of them are listed here. We're going to find that there's going to be a sense of shared purpose and direction, that everybody is aligned to understanding why we are there and what our overall purpose and agency is to accomplish. We're going to be following what Deming would say was the intended or proposed aim. You'll see this in the new economics as well, an intention that everybody wins over the long term. There's going to be helping across different dimensions of the organization. You're going to see boundaryless teams that are going to assemble and reassemble. It's not going to be petty fiefdoms. We're going to have a lot of cross cooperation, mutual support. And some of the phrasing that you're going to hear in meetings is going to use the pronouns we and us. How do we accomplish this? What is the implication for us? Now, contrast that with a low collaboration environment where the sum of interactions is not multiplied, but is actually negative because it goes towards how well do I do? It's very protective. Someone else is always at fault. That's their thing to do. Why aren't they doing something about this? So we've got a lot of adversarial relationships that are going to be existing in this kind of environment. We're going to find that because of the context that everybody is within, they're going to be very protective about their turf. They're going to want to prove themselves. It's everyone for themselves. I've got to prove my value to my employer so that I'll have a job tomorrow and my buddy might not. And you can imagine what kind of outcomes come from a low collaboration environment like this, where things are pulled apart in many, many different directions, and we've got high siloization. Next. Okay, so now we have choice. Now this maps to autonomy. So in a high choice environment, what does it look like? What are the cues that we begin to see? This is one where people feel a sense of direction and purpose and agency directly. I have an ability to pursue the kind of work that I find most interesting, and my organization supports me doing that. It feels like you've got some directional aim to cast your actions toward. There's a purpose toward it. There's direct ownership of your work. You're going to feel a little bit more attached to the products and the services and the ideas because you're going to see them as having an actual impact. This is also a high choice, high autonomy space. You may see that your distance towards the customer, whoever that may be, collapses. You're going to have a higher degree of visibility in that. You're also going to have a greater, through all of this, you're going to feel a greater sense of freedom and direction, of course. And this idea, this notion of possibility is a possibility as opposed to a fantasy or an impossibility or wouldn't it be great? It's what could we do? There's going to be some very interesting things. You're going to have high divergence. Now let's contrast that with a low choice or a low autonomy environment. This is where we feel like we're pawns and that options get killed off. We're going to see there is a phrase, I think, from old French or Latin, cide, C-I-D-E, and that's where we see words like homicide or decide come from. It's the cutting off of options. It's the limiting of view and potential. So inside of a low choice, low autonomy environment, you do as you're told. You're going to be basically beholden to the policies and caprice of management to direct you this way or that. You just do what's expected. And as a result, every day begins to take on a little bit of a monotone color. It doesn't feel like that you're making that much of an impact. And I've often heard this expressed from past coachees of mine. It feels like when you push into the environment and then you pull back out, it doesn't look like anything happened. It's like you just went into jello. It just, no matter what you do, there is no influence, no impact. And one of the things that we'll see, especially around teams, this gets telegraphed from management right into the teams. You're going to find there's going to be a high degree of indecision and sometimes indifference. Why should we bother? You know, I tried this before. I got slapped down, or someone came in and invigilated what I was doing and told me not to do that. And why did I do that? And I didn't have authorization. So low choice environments, you can imagine the kind of output that you're going to get from it and the kind of relationships that are going to form inside of that. So finally, my favorite, a high challenge environment. This corresponds to mastery. This is where we're going to find perhaps the best sense of purpose for an individual. And we're going to get great things out of an organization that unlocks this potential for challenge in work. It feels like the work that we are doing is going to be consequential. It's not easy. I have a customer right now who exemplifies this, who make devices for Internet of Things edge computing solutions. And the challenges that they set before them, they're about as difficult on scale as what, you know, Elon Musk is challenging with SpaceX. They're trying to make products that have never existed before and that are going to help people manage and do things at a very interesting scale, you know, thousands and thousands of devices. So there's high challenge in that kind of work. And you see that what comes out amongst teams in there is that while it's high challenge work, it's really gratifying to move it. It's really gratifying to work against it. You're going to find that people get really involved in this kind of work, are very excited to have discussions around what they are making and what kind of problems they're trying to solve. And it's high positive energy. There's just no difference or no substitute for this. When we look at what a low challenge environment is like, we're not going to see many of these conditions. So I like the idea of the applicable phrases that you're going to find in these organizations about being in the zone. For software developers, they talk about the state of flow, but this also exists in almost any intellectual effort. You know, for writers, for designers, you'll find that they will all talk about this mental state where they slip into it and time just seems to dilate and evaporate. And they are focused on the work because it is so challenging and so enjoyable, even if it is a little bit beyond their grasp. So let's contrast that with low challenge. Well, it's pretty much the photographic negative. It's a place of boredom because you don't feel appropriately challenged to the work. It seems very rote, very simple. You mastered it very quickly. In a low challenge environment, one of the first things that I recommend for my customers to look at is how do you automate away some of the drudgery? Usually this is a symptom of not understanding. And the higher challenge, if you unlock the teams, is to figure out ways to automate all of the boring, repetitive, segmented work so that they can focus on more interesting problems, so that they're not stuck in a condition of worry. They're not feeling like, God, I just got to get through this day. I'm watching the clock, waiting for 5 o'clock to come, and the chairs are going to spin and I'm out. Now you can imagine the mental condition that is going to be inside of a low challenge environment where people are not going to be very interested in interaction with each other. They're just going to be interested in punching the clock, get in, get out. It's really worrisome for an employer to think that this is the kind of environment you would want to foster, because the quality of work that you're going to get from it is not going to be anywhere comparable to what you see in the high challenge environment. So you have a worksheet that puts these into a continuum. You've got a 5-point scale, and this is what you're going to be working on. Now, of course, don't get too hung up on the 5-point scale. This is not about how to rate and rank an organization. It is about how to interpret what you are perceiving between the dimensions of motivation, the low collaboration to high, low choice to high, low challenge to high. So more important than anything is to have a discussion around what those dimensions mean. And I would strongly suggest having some conversation around what that means in context with some of your peers at your organization, to say, what do we think low collaboration and high collaboration mean for us? And use that to inform where you're going to fall in that continuum.
Contributions today. If you have any questions of Chris or myself, please text me or email us both. I believe, Chris, are you still willing to respond to Teach to Learn notes?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So as you submit your Teach to Learn notes today, I'll pass those along to Chris. And like I comment on them, Chris will have an opportunity to also provide some comments or feedback.
I'll also let the participants know that I'll leave the scorecard that we did with the radar graph on it up, so you can make copies of that.
Excellent.
And try using it in your discussions.
Thank you so much for making that addition to our session today. That was a new thing that you added. Makes a lot of difference to be able to see real time how we're responding. So thanks for doing that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.